In the coming months, as I mentioned, legislation is coming. Stablecoin is first, and then market structure after that. And I've already begun meeting with certain key senators and starting the meetings in the House. And there will be more to say in the coming months.
What's up, Ida Gang? Welcome into Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here, Fareed. As a part of today's brief update, I want to break down some recent news and just some mentions that Charles Hoskinson has made here within the Cardano ecosystem. I also want to dive into Cardano's price appreciation, given the recent announcement from Donald Trump about ADA being available as an asset to be added to the US-based crypto reserve. Now, as we get ready to wind things down, there's also some key updates coming in here from one of the chief technical officers developing Cardano from IOG. And then we're going to close out here by taking a look and reviewing the Edinburgh EDI, or the Decentralization Index, which continues to favor Cardano. Now, before we go any further, if it's the first time that you and I are crossing paths, first off, welcome in. My goal is to help you find your footing here within the Cardano and Bitcoin ecosystems. If you appreciate content just like this, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up on the way in. If you want more, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to voice off down below. Now, if you aren't aware, I am a stake pool operator here within the Cardano ecosystem. And if you'd like to extend your support for the channel, consider delegating your ADA with either of the two Dapp Central stake pools, which both share the ticker DAPP. Without any further ado, let's jump right on in to the first piece of content that we have here. This is coming in here from Roman Pellerin, the CTO at IOG since 2020. Now, he breaks down the fact that Cardano has the ability to deliver, even though, yes, good things do take a long time. So this is essentially a timeline or breakdown of some of the key milestones here within the Cardano ecosystem, ranging from 2020 all the way to 2025. So let's actually break this down here step by step. And what we have to do is sort of look at this from the bottom up. So back in July of 2020, as the prior bull market was just finally beginning to warm up, we saw the introduction of the Shelley era, which brought on the proof of stake protocol that we all know and love today. Following that, in December of 2020, we had the Allegra hard fork, which brought on metadata for different assets, etc. on chain, followed by the Mary hard fork, which introduced tokens and NFTs, followed by Alonzo, which was right around the peak of the last bull market, which introduced Plutus V1 smart contracts. If you're watching this and you're an OG, leave I'm an OG in the comments down below. Not many people remember this particular time frame. This is actually when I was just beginning to wake up to the potential and the capabilities that Cardano had. And since then, we've obviously upgraded to Plutus V2, with the majority of protocols now using Plutus V2 smart contracts. And then we just got the introduction of Plutus V3 with the latest Plomin hard fork or Plomin upgrade, which again, I think is going to be sort of the next target for the ecosystem as a whole to begin developing and adopting. Now, following that, in September of 2022, we had pipelining and Plutus V2 introduced with the Vassal hard fork, followed by the Valentine upgrade in February of 2023, which brought on brand new interoperability standards, especially with Bitcoin. And then following that, we just recently had in September the Chang hard fork portion number 1, which kickstarted or at least enabled some of the key features here for decentralized governance. And then just last month, or now technically 2 months ago, in January of 2025, is when we saw the Plomin upgrade taking Cardano into full-on decentralization into the Voltaire era or the governance era. Now, just a couple of days ago, we just had Cardano's on-chain constitution being ratified. And then just a couple of days ago, if not hours ago, we just had Cardano being confirmed that it will be one of those key assets that can and will be added to the US crypto reserves backed by Donald Trump, his administration, and his crypto working group. Now, of course, I broke this down yesterday. If you missed it, This was posted on Truth Social. So yes, while it does look like Twitter, it is not Twitter. And the original post that I had actually had a timestamp that was ahead of the time at which I posted the video. Keep in mind that if you're watching from the US, that anyone who takes a snapshot or screenshot in a time zone ahead of the US could technically have a picture that shows a time zone that we in the US have not had met yet or have not passed yet. So keep that in mind. I believe that the screenshot that I shared with everybody yesterday as a part of that video came from someone who was around the Australia area, which showed them being ahead of the time at which I actually posted the video. Now, one key piece that I didn't mention yesterday is the fact that by default, the assets that will be included in this strategic reserve, of course, include Bitcoin and ETH. I did not mention those yesterday. I was solely focusing on the altcoins, which of course also include XRP, Solana, and ADA. Now, one thing that I mentioned before as well, which sort of goes into the timing of this, is the fact that the working group has, I want to say at this point, roughly 130 days-ish in order to get some sort of report back on Donald Trump's desk in order for him to make a decision as to the feasibility, number one, of the strategic crypto-backed reserve, and then number two, any laws or regulations that the working group thinks that will make it easier for Trump or his administration to allow for the crypto industry to flourish within the USA. So I'm excited for that. Now, granted, we also have the expectation of the Grayscale ETF. There's been a couple of other ETFs as well, which have recently actually gone online, but I don't think that any of them will hold as much weight as the Grayscale ETF. And if that's also able to be approved within the next 100 to 180 days, those two things alone could be the catalyst for Cardano going to brand new all-time highs. And I'm actually going to put out a separate video breaking down my thesis and my logic and reasoning as to why I do believe that Cardano will make a new all-time high. It's just a matter of when, not necessarily if. Now, as we jump back into the charts here, very briefly, I think that this was sort of expected. Cardano yesterday on the day up 72%. Now, following the next day, we're currently down roughly around 14%. Again, this is given, but we expect for volatility to come in at the time that you least expect it. And for me, looking here at the RSI, seeing the fact that we were basically bottomed out here on the daily, I was looking for any sort of rebound. Now, did I expect a 70% rebound? I definitely did not, but that's the luck of the draw right there. So by no means am I complaining. Cardano is the asset that actually has pumped the most with the recent announcement of the strategic reserve. Bitcoin did about 9 or 10%. ETH did about 9 to 10%. Cardano was up 72%. XRP was next in line in terms of the biggest gains with roughly around 30%. Let's take a look at that chart here. And then we had, let's see, this is right there, 34% coming in from XRP. And then Solana did roughly around 20%. So it's my personal opinion here that we've seen Cardano currently has sort of the biggest portion of the market attention right now. About a year ago, Solana seemed to have a lot of that attention, but now it seems to have transitioned into Cardano. So I do believe, in my opinion, that as price continues to appreciate in Bitcoin, we're going to see Cardano outperforming and breaking into a new all-time high before XRP or before Solana continue to make higher highs, even though they've technically made new all-time highs as of late. Think that'll do it there for sort of the first portion of today's update. As always, if you guys do enjoy news pieces just like this, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. If you want more, consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to voice off down below. Now, the next thing I want to break down here is the search interest or the Google Trends for Cardano in the last 30 days. And then we'll also break this down over the last year and actually compare that to Bitcoin here as well. So we can see, given the fact that we've just had that big announcement from Donald Trump, Cardano search term interest is at a new all-time high, literally in 24 hours. So what we're looking at here is Cardano search engagement over the last 30 days. And then we can see the fact that literally on March 2nd, it has spiked to a new all-time high. Now, if we zoom out just a little bit and look at Cardano search term interest over the last 12 months, we can also see that we are expecting, right, for the next print to be at an all-time high. Now, what exactly was going on back here? This was right after Donald Trump had just been elected, and this was right after the presidential election in the US, where we saw altcoins, especially Cardano, doing numbers, Cardano in specific, doing, I think, roughly around 300% in 2 weeks. So that was the last time that we saw search interest in Cardano. And of course, now with this new renewed interest around Grayscale and the US crypto reserve, it seems like even more people are now beginning to wake up to the potential that Cardano has. If we take a look here at Bitcoin, this is Bitcoin search term in the last 30 days. Nothing crazy after the Bitcoin announcement for the strategic reserve. But if we take a look here at the last 12 months, we can see that there is beginning to be renewed interest in Bitcoin search terms alone. So again, pretty interesting trends to keep in mind, especially as we've also seen trends on platforms like Coinbase, where we've now also seen their advanced trading platform bringing in the most fees they've ever generated in the last week alone. So this could be a sign, or at least an early indicator, that retail is around the corner. Again, once we've gotten regulatory certainty and we've got accessibility through ETFs, etc., I think that's when we're really going to see a lot of the bull market hype, or the euphoria stage of the bull market, finally kicking off. Next, and before we talk about Charles Hoskinson, I want to dive into the EDI, or the Edinburgh Decentralization Index. I've talked about this in separate videos before, but if you've missed it, I'll leave the links to those down below. Essentially, we've got the University of Edinburgh, which has a research group funded by IOG, and their job is to put together a decentralization index, breaking down and comparing the biggest blockchains and which ones, or at least identifying which ones are decentralized versus which ones are not. Now, we've also already heard, and people have picked on the fact that because this is funded by IOG, that this is more or less leaning towards favoritism towards Cardano. But I tend to beg to differ. And I also realize that if the Cardano community wasn't going to put something like this out, that it would be in no one else's best interest to do so, because of the fact that they know that Cardano is leading in a lot of these key indicators. So what I want to just briefly highlight, of course, I'll leave the link to this down below, is the Nakamoto coefficient and the Gini coefficient. And I won't get too technical here, but to break down the Nakamoto coefficient here, what you want is a higher number or a higher value. So as we can clearly see, Cardano leading the pack in this light blue color, but it states that the Nakamoto coefficient represents the minimum number of entities that collectively control more than 50% of the resources in order to take over a particular network, whether that's proof of stake or proof of work. Of course, Cardano being proof of stake, we have the Nakamoto coefficient currently at 58 compared to 2 for Bitcoin. And then we have ETH at 2, Litecoin at 2, Dogecoin at 5, meaning that in order to take over more than 50% of the stake on Cardano, you'd have to take over 58 different stake pools, if I'm not mistaken, versus 2 miners on Bitcoin versus 2 staking providers on ETH, and then very similarly Dogecoin with 5 validators, Litecoin with 2 validators, and then Bitcoin Cash with 4 validators. Scrolling down, we've got the Gini coefficient, where on this particular chart, it's the exact opposite, where you actually want a lower value, not a higher value. So again, we've got Cardano leading the pack, and it states that the Gini coefficient represents the degree of inequality in distribution, where the values that are closer to 0 indicate high equality. In their particular case, all entities in the system produce the same number of blocks, meaning that across the distributed network, we're seeing a fair amount or a nice distribution of participation across all the validators. And then the closer that the value is to 1, it indicates a high inequality, meaning that there is sort of a favoritism or one entity, right, that leans to produce the majority of the blocks. So this again shows that Cardano is doing extremely well, leading Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Dogecoin, ETH, Litecoin, Tezos, and Zcash. One thing that I'd love to see here is the addition of additional blockchains. But again, keep in mind that this is just the alpha release and that we are expecting some more content here, especially around tokenomics. That's going to be one that I'm really keen to see more information on, given the distribution of assets at Genesis between, for example, Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and Cardano. So I'll leave the link to that down below. Want to take the opportunity to briefly touch on that. As we get ready to wrap up here, this is probably the most interesting piece, but we have some content from Charles Hoskinson around his recent meeting with key members or key officials from the Trump administration. Could it actually be Donald Trump? Could it be Elon Musk? Could it be David Sack or Senator Tim Scott? The options or the possibilities are still in the air, but I want to read and quickly recap a statement that was just made by Charles himself. So he states here, I appreciate the enthusiasm and speculation around his recent visit, but he'd like to state that no one is being appointed to the executive branch or to any crypto related role tonight, and that meetings do not imply endorsement or magic new powers, and that legislative processes are just that, a process that takes time and effort. In addition, Charles mentions, I will not comment on this topic again until I have definitive and tangible news that this is relevant to the legislative process in order to get new laws on the books that enable the industry to survive and thrive in the USA. At this particular juncture, further comment and speculation are both counterproductive and unnecessary. And in closing, our industry is well represented and good things are coming. Leave it at that and let the process happen. Let me know what you guys think down below. It is unfortunate, right? Because I think a lot of people were obviously expecting or anticipating some big breaking news literally right after the meeting. That doesn't appear to be the case. And it doesn't appear to be the case that he's only focusing on speaking or uplifting Cardano. It sounds like this is more or less around regulations, what he could potentially do, and how he could weigh into that process to benefit the entire crypto space. Now, the fact that, Cardano was listed as one of the potential strategic reserve assets right after this meeting, could that be a coincidence? Or could that actually be a reason as to why, or could that be a result of why he had went up there and had some sort of meeting? We don't know the correlation just yet. So I'll keep an eye out on that. But as we get ready to close out, I want to play two brief clips here from Charles Hoskinson highlighting what we can expect in terms of adoption for crypto assets and exactly where Cardano stands moving forward. So we're going to break down this first clip. I've got a second clip, and then we're going to close out today's update.
Moving forward, we are going to see the largest companies in the world begin to adopt cryptocurrencies. Once there is an opening of the regulatory window, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and others will enter the space. You'll see in your iPhone a wallet turn on. You'll see in Facebook a cryptocurrency wallet. You'll see in Android cryptocurrency capabilities, the same for Windows, which can hold pretty much anything. This will bring 3 billion customers into the space. It's going to become very easy to KYC people. It's going to become very easy for transactions and commerce to move at the speed of thought.
So that's the first clip there, highlighting and sort of discussing where crypto will go moving forward. He talked about 3 billion users coming in through platforms and places like Google, Microsoft, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And I tend to generally believe this. And I think that this is also why Charles has been focusing on the wallet experience, especially with Lace. Imagine Lace, right, being one of the key apps that comes, I don't want to use the word bloatware, but preloaded onto different wallets or onto different hardware. For example, like your iPhone, your PC, your MacBook, etc. We can get to that point. We just need platforms and networks that are reliable and that are safe and secure. And so that's just sort of the first clip I want to play there, really reiterating how early we are and the fact that we don't have big tech giants currently in the space. But when we do, that is when things are going to really begin to pick up. Let's jump into the next clip here. And let's go ahead and listen in.
In the coming months, as I mentioned, legislation is coming. Stablecoin is first, and then market structure after that. Many people will be involved in this process. I've always been a creature more of the legislative branch than the executive, so I have a stronger role and remit there. And I've already begun meeting with certain key senators and starting the meetings in the House. And there will be more to say in the coming months about that. The White House is pretty crowded these days with a lot of people wanting to get involved with the process on that side. And we know many of them. And I think they're doing a fine job.
There you go. Again, Charles reiterating the impact that he wants to have, right, when it comes to Capitol Hill legislation, regulation all around the crypto and Web3 space. Now, he talked about the fact that regulations and stablecoin and market structure are sort of the first topics at hand. There was an interesting crypto-based conference with David Sachs and Senator Tim Scott that took place about 2 weeks ago now. And I broke that down here on the channel, but that's exactly what they'd mentioned there too. And so as we get ready to close out today's video, there was a recent post by Frederick Regard, the head of the Cardano Foundation, about the fact that he was in the UAE, I want to say in Dubai, to speak with different exchanges about Cardano native support and Cardano asset support. And he met with the team from Circle, which provides USDC, obviously by far one of the biggest stable coins here in the entire crypto space. Now, he left a comment here on this post where he says that he's got something else that he's currently working on in order to address stablecoin concerns. We've got Melon from the Dex Hunter team asking RLUSD, which is the stablecoin from XRP or from the Ripple ledger. And then we've got Stake with Pride stating that he thinks that it's something that is even bigger than RLUSD. And then we've got Charles coming back in and stating the biggest. Now, you can read that and take that the way that you want, but there aren't many other stable coins that are bigger than RLUSD. That really only leaves at this point USDT and USDC. There's also potentially other stable coins like DAI, but we know here in the Cardano ecosystem, there's been a huge bit of demand for USDT and USDC. So we'll see exactly what happens. I know that the team from USDT, if I'm not mistaken, has been working on UTXO integrations, which obviously aligns directly with Cardano. But there's just been a lot of speculation as of late. And I want to take the opportunity to at least recap and touch on some of the key pieces that Charles himself has mentioned, which include his recent meeting, his involvement with legislation, Capitol Hill, and just the current Trump administration, and then exactly what we can expect when it comes to stablecoin integrations here in the ecosystem. In closing, do keep in mind that we are expecting a Cardano homegrown stablecoin to launch, which is the USDA stablecoin coming out from the Anzins team. And that should hopefully be coming out here within the next couple of days with anywhere between $7 to $10 million worth of liquidity. Obviously, we want to get to billions, but we've got to take things one step and one day at a time. That'll do it here for today's update, breaking down and looking at Cardano's 5-year roadmap, or the achievements that Cardano's achieved within the last 5 years. We've taken a look at interest and just search terms around Cardano, followed by the Cardano Edinburgh Decentralization Index. And then we've just closed out there by highlighting some recent commentary from Charles. As always, if you found content like this to be helpful, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. It's by far one of the easiest ways to support me as a content creator. If you want more, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to voice off down below. That said, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.